Roll, and thank you everybody for joining us for the April 2021 meeting of the Big Hole Watershed Committee. See some new faces and some familiar faces. Normally in our in-person meetings, we would do a round of introductions. It gets a little clunky to do over the Zoom machine, but we do have a register of everyone that's joining. And they're part of our monthly meeting notes. So thank you, everybody. And we'll go ahead and start. Tana, if you could just do kind of our standard Zoom protocol.
Just a second.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so if you're not speaking, if you wouldn't mind just to put yourself on mute so we don't have a lot of background noise, that would be helpful. There's a chat box where you can enter questions as we go if you'd like, and we'll try to answer them, or we'll also have time throughout the meeting and at the end for questions as well if you just want to ask them. And this meeting will be recorded and shared via our email and also our YouTube channel. So just so you know. And I'll give it back to Pedro now.
Awesome.
I've got your director's report ready whenever you're ready.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Tana. So I will start with, usually we start with the precip, and well, actually we have meeting minutes from March that are available. And when those are released, those go out to our board of directors. And we just want to make sure that those are clear and accurate. So if there's any comments or corrections to the March meeting minutes, now would be the time to bring those up. And if we don't hear anything, then I'll move on to the precip and snowpack streamflow report. Normally, Matt Norberg would give this for us from the DNRC. He's not here, but he provided it to us, so I'll go ahead and read it. Stream gauges across the basin are active in reporting. However, sites in the upper Big Hole are still reporting ice conditions. So discharge values are currently below the median values, mostly due to recent cooler temperatures holding melting snowpack back, as well as lack of precip along the valley bottoms. I'm wondering, Tana, should I pull this one up? You want me to share it while I'm talking? Oh, you got it. Okay, thank you. Okay, so those are the gauge readings. Matt usually pulls these the day of or the day before our report. So March snowpack started off above average. However, we transitioned into April. The low elevation snowpack started melting off, coupled with a warm spell has brought the snowpack below average. Currently, we're at 88% of median, and that's an average of all of our snowtail sites. The Jefferson is 83% of median. Precip year to date in the Big Hole is 92%, and the Jefferson watershed is 85% of normal. The median snowpack date for the Big Hole is April 17th. So let's hope for some late spring snowstorms and cooler temps to slow down the declining snowpack. I'm not sure if this data incorporates this recent little snow that we got throughout the region. High elevation dark horse snowtail sites is currently at 95% of coupled with below out faster than the historical average. A little bit concerning there for us looking into the snow year moving forward. So it looks like a good time to do your snow and precip dances. A transition from, so now we'll move into the ENSO alert system. We're in a La Nina advisory. So a transition from La Nina to ENSO neutral is likely in the next month or so, with an 80% chance of ENSO neutral during May to July 2021. The 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks are favorable for normal temps and normal precip. However, as we transition out of early spring, the forecast is for warmer and drier conditions to move in. Forecast for May is for above average temps and equal chances of above, below, or normal precip conditions. As we move into the summer, the 3-month forecast is for above average temps and below average precip. ENSO neutral conditions can be variable, so kind of be prepared for, could be anything really is kind of what it looks like right now. But it does not look like our spring is setting up very well. That's kind of what that looks like. So this comes out in our meeting minutes, and folks can have a more in-depth look at that. Cool. And if I were a meteorologist or hydrologist, I could answer questions for you. So I'm assuming there won't be too many questions on that. And I'll just move in. Do you want to do, Tana, do you want to jump into drought subcommittee now?
Sure. The big drought subcommittee met last fall and decided to recommend renewing the existing drought management plan, which is from 2016, with no changes this year. So that's just the recommendation from the committee, the subcommittee, and then the full Big Hole Watershed Committee needs to approve that unless there's any discussion. And I guess we need to see if we have a quorum today.
Yeah, let me get a quick count here. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I think we can approve it.
7.
Okay.
I've got 7. I don't think we have. I think we may have to do this virtually by email, because I've only got 7 board members.
We can do it via email, but does anyone have any questions or comments or want to do any discussion on this topic? Okay, no, then we'll put the recommendation to the board via email.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. That's the drought subcommittee. We'll move on to my report. And Tana's going to pull that up for me. Sorry, folks, I didn't have it on my machine. All right. So things have been kind of starting to move faster here at the committee. And I'll talk about just kind of some of our partnerships that have been deepening. And I'll start by talking about a partnership that is new to us that we've just entered into an agreement with the Dillon area United Way that's supporting us in our 1% for the River campaign and in our outreach to the general community. That you'll be seeing some of the results of that partnership later this summer in our efforts to bring the broader community into our conservation work. So we're really excited to be partnering with them for the first time. Outside of that, we've got a couple updates on our partnerships with universities. Max Hansen, who's with us. Hey, Max. He did a series of interviews with some of our with some folks in the Big Hole that have done conservation work, and he's just trying to do a qualitative study just to understand kind of the motivations behind private landowners getting work done on their properties. What are the motivating factors? What drives them to do it? what are the bottlenecks that they see. It's kind of some helpful stuff to help us, meet folks where they're at, really, and try to bring conservation projects to them in a way that works for folks. So he's going to be presenting his results tomorrow, and I'll chime in on that via Zoom. And if anyone else is interested in that, also we can share that Zoom link just to make them a little bit more nervous. Montana Tech, we had a master's student, Carly Peach, with the Ecological Restoration Program, did a presentation of her work that was based on our project in the Smelter Hills, the Anaconda Uplands, part of the Superfund site. She dug some core samples and was looking at sediment retention behind beaver dams and looking at their ability to sequester metals, because we know heavy metals and contaminated sediments came off of the uplands because of smelter emissions and logging. And she took an in-depth look at what that sediment stratification looks like at the bottom of beaver ponds. And she presented on that work, her sort of culminating work, on the 31st of March, and it was super well received. I think she had 60 or 70 people from around the country chiming in to look at that work. And that was that was directly supported by Ben's program out there. And it was a pretty awesome presentation, helped us adapt our management strategies and some of our programs. And we can share the results, and that presentation is going to be live, is going to be online and available to anyone who wants to see that. And we'll have that in our meeting notes for folks. We are moving forward with a partnership agreement with the Forest Service for our continued work on the Elkhorn mine. And that's pretty exciting. It's in the Forest Service right now, just getting final approval. And then it's a long-term agreement. So that gets us kind of in the Forest Service's good graces and helps them get more characterization done. This is a project that Ben's leading up, basically dealing with acid mine drainage coming out of the Elkhorn mine out there by the Coolidge Ghost Town site. And it's going to take a while. It's going to take several stages of site characterization and assessment before we get into a recommended design to fix that location. And then the Bureau of Land Management, we're also developing a partnership agreement with them. We went out, Ben and I, yesterday to look at the Eastern Pioneers and some projects. They're looking at conifer removing juniper, basically, that are creeping into the sagebrush country. And we've offered to partner with them and take on some of the riparian restoration elements of their program. And so a partnership agreement will be developed for that. And it's just great to meet that team and have them see how we can fill in capacity gaps and keep work moving forward. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks is, I think, almost done with their memorandum of understanding with the Natural Resource Damage Program, basically taking over the direct management of our work under Superfund. Following the completion of that agreement, we will get into a contractual arrangement with FWP. And again, this will be another long-term contract, keeping us at the center of restoration and conservation around the Sugarloaf Mountain and the Anaconda Uplands. We're excited to join forces with the Hope Center that has a facility for folks that are dealing with addiction issues and are in a path to recovery. We're hoping to bring conservation work and conservation projects as part of their program and get some of the folks enrolled in that program up into our project areas and getting work done for us. This will be a trial to see if that is a partnership worth expanding on. And so that was a good contact that we made last month that I reported out on. Nothing's changed. Just wanted to keep that on people's radars. And then our work with the Beaver Working Group. This is a Montana-wide group of folks interested in the use of beaver and beaver-like processes and structures. And one of the stumbling blocks on doing this work is kind of the permitting aspect. So we've been informing that process, and it looks like a group of folks are now going to take on trying to streamline permitting through the Army Corps of Engineers, and it might have to go to a national level. At that point, I take a step back. It's a little bit above and beyond our scope of work, but I'll still be involved informing what it takes to get this work done on the ground. I sent in a letter supporting, just a letter basically by a group called the Interstate Council on Water Policy. This is a national group, and they sent in a letter to Senate and House committees, natural resource committees in Washington, D.C., urging for full funding of stream gauge infrastructure nationally. And obviously stream gauge infrastructure is super important to the Big Hole. And so I wanted to lend our voices in support of full funding of stream gauge infrastructure. And then we're also working on some big grants relating to weeds, relating to climate adaptation, and groundwater surface water study to understand the potential impacts of changes in irrigation from flood irrigation to pivot, and what the overall impact of those types of changes would be on our overall water availability late season. That's kind of important stuff to know, and we're working with the NRCS and the DNRC on that. A couple legislative updates. There's way too much going on in Helena for me to keep track of all of it. SB 29, which was the weather modification bill, I looked that one up. It looks like it got defeated in the full Senate. And I just wanted to, hats off to Jim Hagenbarth, who was kind of just a one-person kind of effort there. Well, there was a lot of people involved, but Jim really put a lot of thought and hard work into trying to get this bill passed. And I listened to the hearing on it, and it looks like there was concerns coming from a couple places that ended up defeating that bill. So sounds like that one's done for. SB 153 was the one where fish wildlife, that was sponsored by Senator Wellborn. It sounded like it was a pretty aggressive bill when it first came out. It looks like the version that's out now has been stripped of all of the really troubling elements. And right now it looks like it's going to be a conservation fee that's going to be added for users of fishing access sites, trying to get folks that use fishing access sites that don't necessarily get a fishing permit or fishing license to help pitch in for general conservation funding. That's basically what's left of that bill, and the latest draft is linked here if anyone wants to see it. Too many others to mention, and I'll end just with an update on our conservation fund. We've got a working draft of a logo and a brand for that fund here. Getting a couple more tweaks to it, but you'll start seeing something like this imagery here at local businesses that decide to sign up with us as partners, and they're going to be asking their clients for a 1% conservation fee on their bills that will go directly to funding our projects. So really giving folks that love the Big Hole and value the Big Hole an invitation and an easy way to give back to the river. And hopefully the next time they come and visit, the place will be just as they found it the last time. That's kind of what we're hoping for. And lastly, we've got a software online now called Harness that gives us the opportunity to raise funds in ways that we hadn't before, and really getting us into the minds of folks that are maybe just cruising through the Big Hole temporarily. So if you've got your cell phone out, it would be great if by the end of this meeting we could get a few more donors. If you want to see what this is all about, this basically will get you directly connected to us, and we can keep you directly connected to your cell phone with text messages and updates on our projects. So if you text the word Big Hole to this number 26989, you'll get a return message, and that'll get you plugged into our system. I'd love to see if we can get maybe 10 people giving us $10 after this meeting. That would be awesome. And then you'll be signed up, you'll be on our list. And as we roll out our partnerships, there'll be all kinds of fun prizes and things related to the Big Hole that we'll be rolling out. So you'll want to be among the first to join with us in this effort. So when you get a chance during this meeting, grab your cell phones, text Big Hole to 26989 and give us your feedback and stay connected. That is my report. So we will move from there to our steering committee. Anybody from the steering committee want to chime in here?
This Jim Hagenbarth. We met on Tuesday the 13th at Fairmont. All members were there. And Pedro went through the 1% program and everything that he went through on the meeting or just previous to this. Had a good meeting, and the Big Watershed Committee is very, very busy and a lot of things going on. And we thank the staff for keeping the ball rolling. Roy, I see you're on. Do you have anything? Yes, not. So that's the end of that's your report for the steering committee meeting.
All right. Thanks so much, Jim. And thanks again for your efforts on the cloud seeding.
Well, I'd like to thank the Big Hole Watershed Committee for supporting that. That'll come up again in 2 years. It's kind of a new concept. It's an old concept, but it's new. So we'll hit it hard next time. It's very, very important, and it has no downsides. But we'll just keep educating people in regards to the benefits that it has for this state.
Great. I know you put a lot into that, so thank you. Okay, next up is our wildlife report.
All right. First, I just want to give a quick reminder to follow us on social media and sign up for our email newsletter at bhwc.org if you're not on our email list already, and to join us the third Wednesdays for our monthly public meetings. Currently on Zoom, but it looks like, as we mentioned earlier, we're hoping to go back to in-person meetings at the Divide Range in May. Okay, so now on to wildlife. We do have wildlife conflict loaner toolkits for producers and residents to borrow. They could borrow any or all of the tools in the kit. They could use them for the season. You could test them out and just see what you think. We have several resource guides, including books on livestock guard dogs, scats and tracks, wolves, bears, all kinds of stuff. And we have tools related both to trying to protect livestock from predators, such as temporary electric fencing and scare devices. And then we also have bear safety supplies. So if you're out recreating or to do field work in the Big Hole or whatever, and you'd like to borrow bear resistant backpacking containers, bear spray, inert bear spray to practice with, or anything like that, just get in touch with any of us at the Watershed Committee, and I've got it all in Divide, and I can meet you or deliver it potentially. So just don't hesitate to reach out. And then right now, our livestock carcass removal and composting program is going on. It runs March through May, and we employ a compost site manager, well, wildlife program technician, but he drives our carcass removal dump truck and manages our compost site, and he will pick up livestock carcasses for Big Hole ranchers free of charge, although we do accept donations. And then he takes the carcasses to our compost site right outside of Wisdom. You might have seen it there by the MDT site. And within a couple months, the carcasses break down into basically just dirt and bones. You can see there in the photo, it's composting in process. And then we do keep all producer information confidential, so we won't tell anyone anything about numbers of mortalities or causes of mortalities or anything like that. And we do this to reduce predator attractant on the landscape, to keep bears and wolves from coming into ranches and getting in trouble and causing potential safety issues. So we're also set up to, if you want more information on this program, you can just text carcass to that same number, 26989, and it'll give you all the information you need, including John's phone number, which is also right there on the screen. And you can call or text John and he'll get in touch with you. And that is all I have for wildlife today, unless Jim or Dean have anything to add.
The only thing I have to add is I have seen bear tracks and wolf tracks lately, so the bears have come out, and it looks like Chet's gonna have some wolves.
The only thing I have is down in Idaho, Western Watersheds is they agreed not to object to the Ruby pipeline in Nevada in exchange for $15 million. And they're put that money into a sagebrush conservation fund. And they're going around Idaho, and they stopped and talked to the Clark County Commissioners. That's where we are. And their intention is to build that fund. It could be something like similar to the American Prairie Reserve. It's a nice website, but their intention is to use that money to retire leases in both state and federal, and work with NGOs and taking livestock off sagebrush ground. So it's, you might remember Western Watersheds is one of the groups. John Marble's the head of it, that sued U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on grayling. So just wanted to bring that out. It's for the public land rancher, it's a real risk because we have a very difficult time working ranches competing with 501(c)(3)s in their purchasing our ranches, and then possibly getting paid to not graze by John Marble's group. So that's interesting. Also, both Dean and I have been getting some requests to interview in regards to wolves and how they impact those of us in the Big Hole, and things that we're doing about it in regards to the Big Hole Watershed Committee. So hopefully they'll learn from the progress we've made. So that's all I have.
All right, thanks, Jim. And yeah, like Dean mentioned, and I'm sure Rory will probably go into it, but bears are waking up, so now's a good time to be very careful when you're out recreating. And yeah, Kim Johnston, our other presenter, couldn't make it tonight, so it'll just be Rory. But first, it'll be Ben for restoration report.
All right, well, hello everyone. Ben Laporte here. I'm the programs manager for the Big Hole Watershed Committee. Thanks for joining us on this Zoom meeting again. We're getting close to moving on from this Zoom stuff, so thanks for bearing with us. Since the last time that we met and I spoke to you guys, we completed our Pennington Bridge restoration project, the first phase of it. And really the big objective for the phase 1 project was to lower the point bar that's directly upstream of the Pennington Bridge here. And so the way we did that was we removed roughly 3,500 cubic yards of that material off of that point bar in an attempt to alleviate some of the bank pressure that's really hitting this bank here hard. It's really chewing up this bank, and you know, there's concern of the river migrating and avulsing away from this bridge, and we want to do everything that we possibly can to keep that bridge infrastructure intact and to you know, help heal up this bank here so we can keep the water quality and the temperatures right in this section of the Big Hole. So happy that happened. Also, our phase 2 project, which is the more in-depth and intense look at the issue here, has started. We have Great West Engineering. They went out after we did our phase 1, and they captured these cross sections here that you see in blue here. So having this data that they collected as far as topography and just getting on the ground and getting all the data that they need will help inform us on future modeling and design here for this phase 2. So Pennington Bridge is moving along. You know, Pedro mentioned it, but we're really rolling out our Big Hole Conservation Fund. And this is our first project that we're really campaigning on this new software called Harness. So, you know, we're allowing folks to get involved here and help us with our objectives here and what we're all about here. And this is one way to help kind of do that, is to get involved, and you can help with certain projects and identify projects that you're interested in. This is the one that we're really working on right now. So I encourage you again to text Big Hole to 26989. We have a little bit more in-depth content on our Harness page that will kind of give you a bit more of an idea of what's going on at Pennington and allow you to get involved as well. So this is a time-lapse video. I've been going heavy on the time lapses, but I think it's pretty cool to show. This is the Pennington Phase 1 project, and what you're looking at here is the work that row excavation accomplished in about a week and a half here, removing all that material off of this point bar. So they were just moving and grooving. A cool part of this project is that all of this material was actually utilized by Madison County on road improvements on Guillaume Lane, which is nearby the project site. So we partnered with Madison County on this project, and it was a win-win for them as well, for the bridge infrastructure and to get some of this material for road improvements. This is a photo of the same site about a week after we finished up. So the point bar is almost completely submerged. This was just after a flush of high water, the upper Big Hole. There were some ice dams that finally let go, and we had a push of some moderately high water come through the area, and our project's doing what we want it to. So we hope here in the next coming weeks and months that reducing the elevation of that point bar is really going to help with the opposite bank here and the bridge. All right, other project developments that I've been working on this month. Pedro mentioned the Elkhorn Mine and Mill partnering agreement with the Forest Service. This is really good news for my program specifically, because for this year, I don't have to worry about grants coming in and whether or not a planning grant will come in through the BOR. So with this participating agreement, we're going to be able to keep up the work at Elkhorn this year, which is really a big time positive. I'll share more about the Elkhorn as we move along through the season. Pedro also mentioned the BLM and the Nature Conservancy partnership in the Eastern Pioneers. And really what this consists of is some identified reaches in the Trapper Creek and Browns Gulch drainages. They're tributaries to these streams, and we're really going to focus on conifer encroachment treatments in the riparian areas, and also in-stream low-tech enhancements and treatments in the same drainages. So it's everything that we've kind of done in the past and that we know how to do, beaver dam analogs and post-assisted log structures here. Idea is to really give these degraded reaches a kickstart here in the right direction. So Pedro and I went out yesterday and met with the big time partners here. And really, we're just trying to hone in where we're going to do the work and then how we're going to do the work. So the idea for the Eastern Pioneers this year for these reaches is this year we're going to do planning, get our ducks in a row, and then next year hit the ground running for doing our work. Also, I've been working on getting a lower big hole stream bank restoration project. This one's just south of Glen. And I've been working on a grant application to try to get this work done and get it submitted. So very similar to a lot of the incentive program, bank restoration and stabilization work that we've done in the past, just on a new ownership and a new stretch here. So we saw the need. FWP reached out to us and identified the need as well. So we view it as a good project, and fingers crossed that we can get that grant and get that one going. Yeah, it's the time of year where I'm getting out in the field a lot more and checking out our projects and just getting out and about. So yesterday we stopped by our East Fork Divide Beaver Dam analog project. This is a structure that we built last year during pretty late in the fall. So the water was really low, and this was the first time that I could get my eyes on what the structures look like this year. And boy, they're holding up really nicely. I'm really satisfied with the way that 2.0 project came out, and I plan on going back out there here in a week or two when it's really juicing to get some before and after photos and to just see how these things are holding up with a little bit more water gushing down through there. So yeah, just project work and grant writing and rolling out our conservation funds really been filling my plate.
So Ben, in this photo, basically what you're showing, the structure there in the middle is the width of the stream when you guys built it, and all the water on either sides is.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Pedro. Correct. So the conifer kind of branchy type of material here that you see with the posts in the stream, that was the width of the stream channel before we put the structure in here. And now what's happening is this water's hitting the structure. There's some sediment getting caught behind it, and it's pushing out, really activating the floodplain around it and soaking the adjacent floodplain. So we're seeing a lot of this throughout. This is just one of the photos that I decided to show, but really increasing the wetted width up here and getting that water soaked into this sponge.
Yeah. And so for the landowners, down here, what they're interested in is they're looking at their pasture staying greener longer through the year because of this extra moisture. And there's about, I think, over 100 of these structures here just on this private ground.
Oh yeah, well over 100. So, and we definitely are seeing a lot greener vegetation a lot longer in the season, just from when we put these in 2019, and then in 2020 we did a second round of treatments up here. So really happy with the results, and so are the landowners. Excellent. Right. Is there any questions for me, guys, out there? All right.
You're doing great work, Ben. Great work.
Hey, thanks, Max. Yeah, absolutely, man. We'll get you out there. I'll show you what it's all about.
Looking forward to it.
Me too, man. Absolutely.
All right. So if there's, is there any new business or additional talking points, new topics that we're not aware of that anyone would like to bring up? This is the time. before we go?
Pedro, this is Jim Hagenbarth.
Yeah,
It's important that the irrigators pay attention to Senate Bill 302 carried by Walt Sales. I'm sure it's going to go through. And what it does is extend the irrigators' ability to file for permits on navigable streams. On a navigable stream, the state owns below the low water mark. And so you have to have a permit to go and work on your diversion. And a lot of people didn't recognize that. It wasn't very well broadcast by the state, by DNRC. And so we have another 4 years. So those folks on the Big Hole River between Tie Creek and the Divide Bridge, that's been declared navigable, need to pay attention and get those permits in. And I talked to Randy at the steering committee, and he wasn't aware of it, and he has a diversion there. So it might be something that you want to slip in on news for the Big Hole Watershed Committee. That's it.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, let's make sure, we'll make sure to get that into the minutes, and Tana will provide the link to the bill up to the moment when we produce that report, so folks have a way to see it.
Yeah, I made a note of it.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I kind of lost you there, Tana. I thought you were saying something.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just saying I made a note to include the information about SB. Is it SB 302, Jim? Okay, yeah, I'll include that in the minutes.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other additional business? Yeah, I see.
Shirley
Shirley.
Johnson. Yeah, Shirley Johnson from the Divide Grange. From Divide. We had a meeting Monday night, and your request for internet service there was approved. Are you still interested in that, or not for the meeting?
Yeah. Oh, so thank you, Shirley. I appreciate that. So what we talked at the steering committee about, we've got a year under our belts with this Zoom thing, and there are people that I know would love to attend our meetings when just 7 o'clock at night, it just is inconvenient to get down to the Grange. And I think we could really boost our ability to keep folks informed if we were able to do a Zoom option for our public meetings. And that just, it's going to require putting up an internet service down there at the Grange.
Yeah, well, we already have the fiber optic in for the phone and that. It's just a matter really of getting a router and getting it set up with Southern Montana. So, but if you want it before your next meeting, we probably should get to moving on it.
Okay. And that's something that, it's going to be it'll be an annual cost or a monthly cost, and we're just trying to figure out how to pay for it.
Yeah, that's what we were wondering, what you wanted to do with that.
I think that, it sounds like it would be worthwhile to do, and I'll kind of get our finances in order here, and I'll get in touch with you to see.
Yeah, we can talk offline. I think Dave King is probably the one will be, either he or Leanne Jensen officially will be contacting you. So
great. If someone could just shoot me an email, and we'll get it going from there, because I do think that would be it would be a something of value, I think, to folks and anyone else that uses the Grange for that matter.
I was also, the school uses it, and I was thinking it might be good for the school. Yeah.
Great. Shirley, thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Any other business additional? If not, I have a great pleasure of introducing Rory Trimbo, who's going to give us an update on bears. grizzly bears in the Big Hole.
Yeah,
Welcome.
thanks for having me. See if I can figure out, I'm gonna share my screen again.
Yep.
How's that
Looks
look?
good.
All right, awesome. Yeah, so thanks for having me. I'm Rory Trimbo with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. I'm the new grizzly bear person in the area. I'm based out of Anaconda right now, but I help out in the Big Hole. I've been there since, I'm pretty new to this area. Just started at the very end of 2019, beginning of 2020 in this area. It's a brand new position that FWP created. But before this, I was doing grizzly bear and black bear management up in Libby area for quite a while. And before that, I was doing grizzly bear research out of Kalispell for quite a few years. So I've been dealing with bears for quite a long time. Yeah, so I got a lot of maps and some great pictures to show you guys. I kind of wanted to start big picture and then kind of bring it down to the Big Hole. Some of this you guys might already know. Maybe it's new information. Maybe it's a good refresher, but I figured might as well start big picture and bring it on down. So I'd like to start with this one just to show people and remind them, you know, historically where grizzly bears used to be. As you can see from this map, historically grizzly bears covered the entire western half of the United States and Canada. You know, all the way to eastern Montana, North and South Dakota, even over into Minnesota, a little bit of Iowa, all the way down through Texas and into Mexico. So they covered quite an area, and that's what obviously that light brown color is showing. The darker brown is where they are now, their current range. So as you can see, my little mouse showing up on there, if it is, that's Yellowstone, that little random little dark spot there, and then you know, the NCDE to the north. So I just think that's a good visual to show people that that's where they used to be and that's where they are now. And this one here shows the 6 different grizzly bear recovery zones that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife has for the recovery of grizzly bears. So way off over to the west in Washington, you have the North Cascades recovery zone, which doesn't really have any resident bears in it. Every now and then they have a bear that crosses the border from Canada into there, but I don't think they really have any resident bears. Kind of purple one, if you start heading east, that's the Selkirk, which covers a little bit of northern Idaho and kind of northeast corner of Washington. That one has 50 to 60 to 70-ish bears in that recovery zone. And as you continue east with that brown one, that's the Cabinet Yaak. So that's where I used to work out of for a while, out of Libby there. That one has about 50 to 60 grizzly bears. Continuing east, you have that blue one. That's the NCDE, the Northern Continental Divide ecosystem. That one encompasses Glacier National Park and pretty much all of the Bob Marshall Wilderness. So that population is estimated at roughly 1,000 grizzly bears. As you go south, we got the yellow one, the Bitterroot ecosystem. That one, similar to the North Cascade, doesn't have any resident bears, although there are more and more starting to kind of show up in there from both the NCDE, and we've even had some bears come down from the Cabinet Yaak, travel all the way down into the Bitterroot. And then down to the southeast, we have the Yellowstone, the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, which has roughly 700-ish bears. And then both, as you can see, both the NCDE and the GYE have those kind of bigger areas around them that have slashes through them. And so that's the current known distribution. I think this map was made in was last updated in 2018, so it was a couple years ago. But so what that current known distribution area is showing is what they count that is areas that there's known females with cubs. So obviously we know grizzly bears are expanding even further beyond some of those areas. But that's just kind of what they did for this map was that's the areas that there's females with cubs and reproducing females. And then they just recently, January of this year, came out with this map of maybe present map for grizzly bears. Unfortunately, they used kind of not the best color to really see. And so I put a big red circle on there to show where the big hole is, and the big hole is quite a bit blue in there. Again, it's kind of hard to see, but so this is just more, I think they're trying to show, again, where bears are showing up, but not necessarily where they're resident bears or reproducing females. So this is just kind of recognizing that bears are moving outside of those areas, but not necessarily becoming established there. Like Ben, I'm a big fan of time lapses, so I'm glad he had one too. This is showing Yellowstone over the years. I think it started in, unfortunately, the thing on the top is covering the time, or the year, but I think it started in 1992 and it's going to go to 2018. So the yellow line is that grizzly bear recovery zone, the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. The blue line is the demographic monitoring area. And then what the green is showing, obviously, is where bears are starting to distribute out. And both this yellow line, the recovery zone, and the blue line are pretty important for their recovery because both of those areas need to meet certain criteria for grizzly bears to be delisted. So I'm going to stop on this one here. So within that kind of yellow area, there's certain criteria that need to be met. And within that blue area, there's certain criteria that need to be met. The blue area is kind of more of the general population size and as well as mortality that's occurring for the bears. And then within the yellow area, it focuses a little bit more on, again, those females with cubs, because females with cubs are the main driver for grizzly bears in their recovery. When I was doing the research up out of Kalispell for quite a few years, that's what we were really focused on was females with cubs and cub survivorship, and trying to focus on that because it takes a really long time for a grizzly bear to replace itself within a population. It can take a female grizzly bear 12 or 13 years to replace herself within a population. So their population actually doesn't grow all that fast when you think about it that way. And so I froze it on this one in 2018 because this one they show some of the kind of outlier confirmed grizzly bear sightings, whether that's actually seeing a bear or tracks. Unfortunately, they don't have a map for the NCDE like this, but I thought this was a pretty cool map to show. All right, now I know this one looks like a lot, but stick with me. This is where we kind of start to get into this in-between zone of the NCDE and the GYE and the big hole. So the left half of the screen has to do with NCDE bears, so bears that are coming out of the north. And the right half of the screen deals with bears that are coming out of the GYE, so they're coming out of the south, out of Yellowstone. And what this is showing is not necessarily where we know the bears are going. So what they did for this information was they collared bears, male grizzly bears. This is only information from male grizzly bears. So they collared some bears in the north and they collared some bears in the south. And what they did was they studied them for about 15 years and kind of studied their movements, as well as layered it with, topography and habitat, and kind of put that together. And so what this is showing is not necessarily where they are moving, but where we suspect they will be traveling. And then they also put the blue triangles on there are confirmed grizzly bears, again, sightings. So they kind of layered that on there to see how accurate their map was. And so, as you can see, are you able to see the mouse when I move it? Yep, okay, perfect. So obviously we got you guys in the big hole down here. And that's obviously on all 6 of the maps. So as you can see, there's kind of a heat path moving through there, especially from those Yellowstone bears. And why there's 3 different ones for each ecosystem is what they did was, as it's thicker here, what they accounted for was grizzly bears coming down and then exploring a little bit. And that's in both those map A's. And then if you move down to map C, where it kind of gets a little more focused, what that is it's kind of showing what they would expect grizzly bears if they're just kind of to beeline it from one ecosystem to the other. So again, as you can see, the big hole shows up on these maps. As you guys know, there are grizzly bears moving through there. So I guess they did a pretty good job with their mapping. And as you can see on some of the other areas, those thicker areas, those are where the grizzly bears are starting to show up and move through. Again, I just started in this area late 2019, 2020. So a lot of this following kind of information actually comes from Jamie Jonkel, who's the grizzly bear manager. I reached out to him. He's a grizzly bear manager out of Missoula, who's been kind of documenting a lot of this stuff. He was handling a lot of the conflicts in this area before I showed up, as well as just doing a good job of documenting sightings. And so a lot of this is his information that he shared with me to share with you guys. And again, just like the maps, I kind of want to start big picture and kind of surrounding you guys before I bring it on down to the big hole. And so as you can kind of see on the map here, this shows Deer Lodge kind of area in Drummond. Quite a few sightings over the years, starting in, I think it was 2010 is the first one on here at least. Or sorry, 2008 through 2019. So on that map, you can kind of see they're really showing up, coming through that Avon area, coming on down through what would be, like the spotted dog WMA, if you guys are familiar with that. I think this is one of the first ones that Jamie worked on. One of the first conflicts he had to come over for was a bear called Dingwall back in 2008, around just southeast of Drummond. They had a bear cross the highway. He got on the south side of the highway, probably coming from the north at NCDE. Got into a bee yard. Seems to be a lot of bee yards around this area, and go figure, bears love honey. So that seems to be one of the biggest conflicts that I usually see is either bee yards or chicken coops with bears. Those are pretty popular with the bears. So that was one of the first ones that Jamie dealt with around here. This is kind of a cool one. This was Kyle. There's a bear named Kyle that they actually captured, as you can see, way up in Swan Lake was his first capture. I think this guy was actually a research bear that they captured and put a collar on. So they caught him way up at Swan Lake, way up there by the Flathead Lake. And he traveled quite a bit. And you can see by the dates, you know, it didn't take him that long. It took him a little over a month to get down to Sealy Lake. He continued on down, you know, he's just north of Drummond within a few days after that. And then from Drummond, it took him 4 days to get over to Deer Lodge in that Spotted Dog area. Then he actually traveled all the way up to Lincoln, Montana, before heading back. And then I think he got captured again. I think he might have gotten himself into trouble for that second capture, but it's kind of cool to see how far these guys can travel. And I got another map coming up that'll really show that. Again, this was a few months before I showed up in this area. There's a grizzly bear spotted in the Flint Creek Range, just north of Anaconda, a little west of Racetrack. This one was actually one of the first ones that I got a call about, at least in my around Anaconda area. So this was a grizzly bear that was caught on a trail camera just east of the highway, northeast of the highway near the Fairmont exit. I think a game warden caught him on the game camera. Didn't hear anything else about him. That was it. He just got caught on a trail camera. So this was the first one that I had to deal with this last year. Back in October of this last year by Gold Creek, between Drummond and Garrison there. We had a bear cross the highway, came from north of the highway, crossed, and got just south of Gold Creek there, and he found himself a pretty sweet spot, a place that had all kinds of tasty treats for a bear. They had ducks and chickens and turkeys and pigs, and they even had peacocks, just about anything you could think of. So, but he focused on the ducks, actually. He just focused on the ducks. And so we had to capture him. And I think he was a 7 or 8 year old bear. He had no history. So we ended up moving him and relocating him north of Lincoln. So we brought him way back north. He hung out there for a couple weeks. And then sometime early November, I think, he came back down to Drummond area. He kept testing the highway, never crossed it again. Late November, it looked like he was going to den north of Drummond in the Garnett Mountains. His collar turned off November 15th. Those collars turn off between November 15th and March 1st to save battery, because obviously they're denning. So November 15th, it turned off and he was just north of Drummond. But when it turned on March 1st, he was coming out of his den northwest of Sealy Lake. So he continued on and traveled quite a bit further north. Earlier last year, there was actually somebody caught a video of a bear trying to cross I-90 near that Drummond area. And then just a few days later, kind of almost in that same area, somebody got a picture of a grizzly bear trying to cross I-90 again. So was that Lincoln Poulter earlier in the year trying to cross the highway? It could have been, but we obviously don't know for sure. A few days before Lincoln Poulter got in trouble, a little bit, about 15 miles to the west of where we did capture him, somebody got a grizzly bear on their game camera. Again, that could have been Lincoln Poulter, because 15 miles in, you know, a day or two is really nothing for a grizzly bear. So that could have been him. However, probably a couple weeks after we caught and moved Lincoln Poulter, in that very same area just south of Gold Creek, there was some fresh grizzly tracks in some fresh snow in somebody's driveway. So that definitely wasn't Lincoln Poulter, because according to his caller, he was still north of Lincoln. So there's definitely another bear at some point in that area, another grizzly bear. All right, now moving over to the Butte kind of Boulder area where they're moving through as well. Quite a few sightings over the years. Again, I think starting in like 2010 or so through 2018 are a lot of these sightings. So quite a bit going on there. A little more focused on the Butte area in 2019. There was quite a few sightings just north of Butte, and I think this is that Elk Park area they call it. So again, these were a couple months before I showed up, so there's quite a few sightings going on up there. And then late in 2020, just this last year, there was another grizzly bear that showed up on a trail camera in the Bull Mountains there, just east of Butte. And this one, this bear didn't show up really anywhere close to the Upper Clark Fork or the Big Hole. But again, this is the one I wanted to show you guys to really show how far a bear can move. So this was Ethel, and she was caught way up here in Eureka in 2012, was collared. And as you can see, between 2012 and 2014, she started making moves, and from Eureka went all the way over to Glacier National Park, hung out there for a little bit, continued on down, really covered the entire Bob Marshall, put some time in there before coming down to Clinton, just a little bit east of Missoula, kind of hung out there, hung around Missoula for a while too. As you can see, she then just beelined it way over around Wallace, Idaho. Hung out there, eventually came back and went all the way down into the Bitterroot. So again, I just want to show this one because I think this one's really cool to show folks how far a bear really can move in a fairly short amount of time. And this one was really interesting too, because females don't usually do this. Females, tend to kind of stick around. They find a sweet spot and they like to hang out there. This is usually more of a young male thing. They like to disperse and kind of move around and find their own territory. So that was kind of another interesting part of it. So now to the Big Hole. As you guys all know, there's been quite a few sightings over the years. Again, a lot of these here were before I showed up. But they've been showing up around Wise River, around Wisdom, a little bit west of Wisdom as well. And something we're trying to figure out, and I'll talk about this towards the end here, are these bears coming from Yellowstone or are they coming from the north in the NCDE? I had my opinion when I first moved here. I just assumed they were coming from Yellowstone, just looking at a map. That was the only information I was going off of. But when I got here, I realized there's some people on one camp or the other. It's kind of surprising to me. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. Late 2019, you guys had one around Mifflin Creek. Looks like it was caught on a game camera. This is the first one that I heard about once I got to the area, and actually Kim was the first one to call me about this. She heard about it and let me know about it, which is great. So these were the Grizzly tracks that were, I believe, some snowmobilers found them on the Foothills Road up near the Trail Creek area, just west of Wisdom. And then after these were found, Kim went to, I think it was called the Ruby Ranch in that area, and set up a trail camera, because that was just downhill pretty much from where those tracks were. So she went out there with Graham McDougall of Wildlife Services, and they set up some game cameras. They were able to confirm and get some good pictures of them. And these might even be Kim's gloves there with the tracks. So that was good to get some pictures of them. That's the last that I think I really heard of this particular bear, at least in that area. So seems like he stayed out of trouble. Then later on in 2020, another one was caught on a game camera, it looks like, in East Pioneer Mountains, just a little bit south of Wise River there. And then there was, again, the one that was outside of Jackson, but I don't have any pictures or anything on that. And I just heard, a few reports here and there that it was being seen, but again, that one didn't really do anything. But never saw any track pictures or actual pictures of it. And then I guess I just want to talk a little bit about, obviously the differences between a black bear and a grizzly bear. Because a lot of people, say, oh, I saw a huge bear and it was brown, and so it had to be a grizzly bear. So I just wanted to quickly point out some of the distinguishing features, because obviously color and size are very misleading, and I got some more slides to show that. But the biggest things we're looking for, obviously, is the shape of the nose. Those black bears have that very straight profile of their face, whereas those grizzly bears have a nice dish face. They're really pronounced forehead that dishes down to their snout before the snout comes out. Big difference in the ears usually. Black bears have those big pointy ears. In fact, when they're cubs, we like to call them Mickey Mouse ears because they're just way bigger than their heads. Whereas grizzly bears have a little bit shorter, rounder ears. Another thing to look for, obviously, is that big hump. But that, again, can be kind of misleading sometimes. I've seen plenty of pictures of big male black bears. Sometimes can have a little bit of a hump. It might look like it's a grizzly hump, or especially if they got their head down, feeding, eating on some grass or something. Sometimes that hump really, really pops up. So that can be misleading sometimes. And obviously those claws are obviously quite different. Black bears have those a lot shorter, 1 to 2 inches, curve pretty sharply, because black bears evolved to climb trees, and so that's why their claws are like that. Versus grizzly bears have those, really long 2 to 4 inch claws that they curve a little bit, but it's a lot gentler of a curve. And their claws evolved more for digging. So like that very first map I showed you guys of historically where grizzly bears were, and a lot of those flat plains areas, the Dakotas and Kansas and Nebraska, obviously they're out there digging in those fields for roots and tubers. And then I'll talk about tracks in a second. But yeah, so I just wanted to point out the coloring here too. So these are all different grizzly bears, all the way from really light tan. This one in the middle is pretty typical grizzly color. We got a pretty dark brown one here. This one down here, the bottom middle, he's pretty black looking. So again, color is not always the best way to tell. Same with black bears. I'm sure we've all seen some pretty brown or light tan black bears in the area. And some of them even, in the middle here, we got some white ones. We probably won't see those ones around here. These are called spirit bears, and they're only found in coastal BC. But again, as you can see, black bears, again, come in many different colors. So that's why color is not always the best determining factor of what kind of bear it is. So the tracks, why I like to point out the tracks is if you guys come across tracks of what you think is a grizzly bear, make sure to report that to myself or Kim, or if Graham McDougall. Make sure you get a good picture of it and get that reported to us so we can get that documented and we can get that kind of stuff to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife so they can use that kind of information. And so I like to point this out, the easiest way to determine it. I look at two things. As you can see here with the Grizzly track, if you're able to draw a straight line between the pad and all of its toes are in a pretty straight line, right? So if you're able to draw a straight line through there, and this little toe is pretty much above that line, you're probably looking at a grizz versus a black bear. As you can see, their toes are a lot more curved. So drawing that line through there, that little toe is going to drop below that line. So that's one of the easiest ways to see that. You can also look for the claws. Those don't always show up. But if they are there, again, those black bear claws are a lot shorter. So they're going to be much closer to the toe there. Versus grizzly bears, they're going to be a lot further out from the toe. Here's some good real-time examples. Black bear here to the left, drawing that line through there. Obviously that little toe is way below the line. And again, those, you can't really see the claw marks there, so that's all we have to go off of, but that's a pretty good example of a black bear track there. Versus the right, another good visual for grizzly bear track. Draw that straight line through there. All the toes are above, pads below. You can even see these claw marks pretty far out from the toe there. So yeah, and make sure if you do come across one and you want to send us a picture of a track, make sure you're getting that front foot. A lot of times people will see a back track of a black bear, and they'll be like, whoa, that's huge, that's got to be a grizzly bear, and they'll put their hand next to it and send us a picture of a back track, and it's not always easy to tell from a back track what it is. So if you can get a good front track, that's going to be really helpful. So that's all I have on that. But then what I want to talk about real quick and inform you guys about is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is going to be doing a grizzly bear DNA hair snare monitoring in certain areas of southwest Montana this year, and that includes the Big Hole area. So again, I kind of circled, fortunately my circle got off, but the Big Hole here, again, they have a map of all the more recent outliers. So they've been showing up quite a bit there in the Big Hole. And so this is to show that they did a previous study like this over in the Lower Clark Fork and the Bitterroot area back in 2008, 2009. They kind of did this study to figure out if bears were moving between the NCDE and the Bitterroot ecosystems. So they deployed a bunch of cameras at these hair snare sites. They did not detect any grizzly bears that year with that study, but that is another area that they want to do it again. So what the goal with this project is basically to document the presence of grizzly bears in southwest Montana outside of those current distribution areas that we know about. And the answers that they're trying, the questions that they're trying to answer are mainly, the sex and the age class of the bears. So they're going to be putting cameras up as well in case to hopefully catch if there's females with cubs coming in, because with these hair snare stations, if there's not a camera there, they go there and they see that there's hair, so they know a bear visited, but they don't know how many or what it was. So with the cameras, they're hoping that maybe they'll find females with cubs. And then again, that really big question, where are they coming from, especially in the Big Hole here? Are they coming out of the NCDE or are they coming out of the GYE? So I'm really interested in that to see what they find there. So just a little description of it. So it's between the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they're partnering up with Defenders of Wildlife, as well as the Forest Service. Each one of them is going to have 10 to 30 sites each. It's going to be based on those previous sightings and recommendations from FWP biologists and Forest Service biologists, where they should put those sites. They're going to be doing it this summer. So they're going to start mid-May and doing it probably through the end of August. The methods they're using, so they set up these hair corrals, which is basically they just bring out barbed wire and make this big square out there. And they put kind of a pile of sticks in the middle, and they just kind of put some stinky fish lure on it. So there's going to be no bait. So when the bear comes in, when he comes by, he's going to smell that. He's going to walk in. He's going to rub against the barbed wire, leave some hair, hopefully. Get to the middle of it. There's going to be no bait there. So he's not going to stick around, and he's going to take off. But, hopefully now we got some genetic samples from him. And again, they're going to be putting those cameras up there. And so, yeah, they're going to be putting these sites at least 100 meters from closed roads and trails, 200 from open roads, and 500 meters from campgrounds. So again, they did this project in 2008, 2009, over in the Lower Clark Fork in the Bitterroot area, but they've also been doing this for I think 15 to 20 years up in the Cabinet Yaak ecosystem. They've been doing this every single year up there. So this is a pretty well-used protocol. They've never had any incidences with it. And they usually put them, again, that's why they're kind of talking to those biologists and trying to figure out areas that are not very popular areas that people go to, one thing to help kind of avoid that. And then here's just kind of a quick map. Again, you're gonna be focusing on the Big Hole area, the Pintlers, the Anaconda Range, Flint Creek Range, as well as down the Bitterroot, and then kind of that Lower Clark Fork area. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of that's coming up. If you have any questions about that, I could try and answer them, or I have contact info for who's leading that as well, and I can get that to you guys if you need it. And with that, yeah, is there any questions?
Awesome, Rory. That was super informative. Thank you. I do have questions, but I'll wait to see if anybody else out there listening in have a question for Rory first.
Yeah, I'll leave my screen up too in case somebody wants to go back to a map or something.
Boy, it seems like the eastern and western pioneers would be a good thoroughfare for some of the bears coming through, because they just cross over the Big Hole at the upper end of it and then go into the the Pintlers.
Yeah, I think on that heat map, I meant to point that out, so thanks for bringing that up, was, as you can see, it's kind of, that's the pioneers are kind of that,
and then
as far as your area, kind of that where that heat map at least is showing. And I know U.S. Fish and Wildlife, they were thinking about doing those pioneer mountains as far as a part of that study, and I'm not sure where they landed on that, if they're going to include that or not. And it's in that study too, it's a pilot study, and they're probably going to they're going to see how it goes, and I'm assuming they'll probably continue it. I don't know if it's going to be every year or every other year, but if the pioneers aren't in it this year but they continue it, I would assume they would probably expand to that.
And if there was a bear who got into trouble in our region, where would you want to drop it back off? Like, would you take it up to Lincoln and then have it come back down, or like?
That's a really good. That's why that study is going to be really helpful, right? Because when there is a conflict bear outside of kind of a recovery zone or even the monitoring zone, usually they know where to put it back, which ecosystem to put it back, and that's kind of one of the questions is, well, where are these bears coming from, and where do we put it back? So hopefully that's going to be helpful, as well as Pedro mentioned before. There's a lot of interesting wildlife legislation going on right now, and some of those things involve grizzly bears. One of the things is FWP might not be relocating bears anymore. Or I'm still trying to figure that one out. That's a good question.
Yeah. And then I just have one more question, Roy. Like, it's been a while since I've been told. Maybe people don't know, but like, well, first of all, like, has there been any human conflicts that have been? Like, I know there's been some in the Gravelies in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
But have there been any conflicts around the big hole? And then what do you do again? You know, like, is the trainer make a bunch of noise and try to act bigger, or I guess, like, what's the thought process there?
Sure. Yeah, as far as like the big hole area and kind of this upper Clark Fork area, as far as I know, the main conflicts like that have been either mistaken ID with a black bear hunter killing a grizzly bear, or I think there's an incident or two of a grizzly bear kind of taking over an elk kill during hunting season.
Yeah.
So those are kind of like the worst that I know, but luckily, you know, the person walked away in those incidences untouched. But yeah, what do you do? You know, some of the recommendations is when you're out recreating, yeah, make noise, travel in groups of at least 3, which, you know I go hiking out by myself sometimes. So I break my own rule. But when I'm out alone, you know, I'm just making sure I got my head up, making noise, whether that's, you know, especially when I'm just hiking. Obviously hunting is a little bit different. That's a whole other thing. But if you're just hiking, you know, I'm making noise, I'm smacking brushes, I'm sometimes talking or singing to myself. Sometimes I get weird looks on the trail, but I've never had an incident. So, but yeah, then come hunting season, you know, that's a whole other thing. And I know I'm guilty of it. You know, we're out there trying to be quiet and sneaky and stealthy. You know, the best thing you can do is just, especially during hunting season, make sure you're out there with at least a buddy, you know, and carry bear spray. Bear spray is a great tool out there, especially when you come in those close quarter, kind of quick incidences. You know, sometimes a bear spray is going to be a lot more helpful than a gun. You know, I'm not trying to tell people not to carry out there. But bear spray can be another really good tool out there, especially if the bear's on you and all you can do is, you know, spray it real quick. So,
Roy, what about for? I mean, it's looking like projecting forward that the big hole may be one of those places that they're going to be moving through.
mm-hmm.
What about for folks that? I know I've had this said to me before, but hair samples sound like a DNA sample would really be critical for you guys trying to understand which populations are coming in and how they're moving, right? So are there recommendations or, you know, for folks that maybe think they saw a bear out in the woods, obviously don't go chasing after the thing, but like, you know, are there recommendations how we can potentially facilitate getting you guys the information that you need? You know, I know Vanna's always told me like, oh, did you get a hair sample?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you're able to safely get a picture of the bear from a safe distance or from a vehicle or whatever, like you said, don't go chasing after the bear just to get us a good picture of it to prove it's a grizzly bear. If you're able to get a good picture, yeah, make sure to get that to us. And again, those tracks, that's usually what more people come across is those tracks. And that's why I like to emphasize, like, get a picture of a good front track so that we can really know for sure. In all reports, even if there is no picture of a bear or no picture of a track, we still take that and we write that down, and it gets added. It might not be as high on the list, just because there's we kind of need some evidence, to be able to confirm it, right? We can't just say, confirmed, stamp on the map for every time we hear that. So, but we'll definitely take note of it and, put that in the records for sure. So yeah, getting that to me, or, you guys know Kim pretty well. And Kim's been in this area for quite a while. She's been a great resource for me as I'm starting to get to know the area. So yeah, if you get it to her, again, she always gets it to us, whether it's me or Jamie over in Missoula or Kevin Fry over in Bozeman. Yeah.
What about for DNA? I mean, can you get what can you get DNA from? DNA evidence, because that's what you would need to determine whether they're Yellowstone or glacier, right?
Yeah. We can usually get that from a good hair sample, and so with those, with that barbed wire, that usually takes a good clump of hair off of them, and so they have to have good follicles on the hair. You might be able to find some good hair samples on just a random rub tree. If you come across a good rub tree that's got hair all over it, you might be able to get some of those hairs, and you can collect those and get those to us. I wouldn't. Some animals, and sometimes you can get DNA from scat, but I wouldn't start collecting a bunch of bear scat and sending it to us.
Oh, that's important. Because I was thinking that is something that you guys might want, but now I'm thinking differently.
Yeah, I would say focus more on the hair for sure. With the bears is probably the best. And what you guys just hiking around, you're probably going to find that most likely going to find that on a rub tree, or if you saw a bear run through a barbed wire fence, after the bear's left, then go check that spot and see if some hair's rubbed off. But yeah, I would say pretty much hair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Super.
So Kim was going to include some information about what to do in case of a grizzly bear encounter. She was unable to because of an emergency, but she's going to send me that information, so I'll be sure to include it in the minutes, because I know I've gone through a couple bear trainings with Kim, and I know that your response depends on the way the bear's acting. So, and I can't tell you the details of that off the top of my head, but I'll put that in the minutes.
Yeah. I can touch on that real quick. But yeah, she's probably got some really good information there too. So we used to teach, if it's a black bear, do this. If it's a grizzly bear, do that. And again, that had to do with, typically, again, black bears evolved in the woods, and they evolved to climb trees when they were threatened. So usually black bears just run away and or climb up a tree, versus those grizzly bears evolved more out on the plains. And so when they were threatened, they had to stand their ground. And so that's typically why we see those different responses in those bears. And that's why we used to teach kind of those different responses. But I think, now we just teach, no matter what kind of bear it is, what the bear is doing is going to determine what you do. And so what it comes down to is usually, there's a predatory bear. You're going to want to fight back, whether it's a black bear or grizzly bear. In fact, black bears are more common to be predatory bears. That's just from case reports in the past. more often than not, black bears are the predatory bears. So if it's a predatory bear, fight back. And if it's a predatory bear, it's going to be probably trying to, it's going to try and sneak up on you. It's probably going to have its head real low. You're probably going to be able to tell pretty quickly if this is a predatory bear or if this is a bear that's just trying to defend itself. So if it is a bear that's just trying to defend itself like a grizzly bear because it's a surprise encounter, whether you just came around the trail and ran into it, or it's a female with cubs, if obviously, again, you try and use bear spray. But if you know that bear is going to touch you and you can't get your bear spray, the best thing to do is do that kind of curl up, get on your stomach and protect your head and neck. But those are just some quick pointers, I guess. But I think, Kim's going to have some good information in there.
Awesome. Any other questions for Rory, everybody? That's great. We'll be out there and we will be bear aware. Definitely be reporting, anything we can provide to you guys as far as info on sightings and things. We'll encourage folks to report it to you. I think most folks are fairly well aware and connected.
Yeah, and feel free to put my contact info in the minutes or something, just so you guys got it and everybody can have it.
Absolutely, it will be. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you, Rory, so much. Can we get just a collective round of applause there for Rory spending his time? Appreciate it, silent or not.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you, Roy. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Can't wait to see you guys in person someday.
Yep.
Absolutely. And for everyone else, thank you for joining us. And I'm really happy to say that we will be in person at the Divide Grange third Wednesday of next month. And we will be talking about fisheries. Get some thumbs up. All right, Sandy, can't wait to see you guys there.
We already had some couple of signups and donations roll in through our harness platform. So thank you so much to everyone for
Oh, that's so
contributing.
cool. We're really excited to just be able to, we like being out in the field and we're doing. And with this application, we're going to be able to just shoot you guys quick videos and things right to your cell phone. So you can just kind of stay really up to date with what we're up to. And we hope that this way of keeping you connected is helpful, and we don't, we're not going to make it a burden on you at all. But anyway, that's all really exciting stuff. Thank you, everybody. Look forward to seeing everybody in person. We'll make the coffee decent, but not good. And maybe we'll make the treats a little sweeter this time too, coming up in May. So we look forward to seeing everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks again, Rory. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Y'all take care. Have a great night.